Hello and welcome to my channel of Passionate PT. In this channel, we're mostly going to make videos on neurorehabilitation and neuroanatomy. Today, I'm going to discuss about the second component of the pyramidal tracts, and that are corticobulbar tracts. We've discussed about the pyramidal tracts and corticospinal, and its first component being corticospinal tract in our previous video. This is a continuation of previous video. Now we will discuss about corticobulbar tracts. So let's get started. Again, giving a brief description that pyramidal tracts are descending tracts. They are always motor tracts. So corticobulbar, being part of pyramidal tract, is a motor tract or are a motor tracts. Okay, so again, starting from the name, cortico means cortex and bulbar means a bulb-like structure. So you need to understand which one is a bulb-like structure in the brain, and that is brain stem. So these tracts, they start in the cortex, which is the most superior layer of the brain, most superficial layer of the brain, from where they start and they end into the bulb-like structure, that is brain stem. Now this is how they're different from the corticospinal tract. That corticospinal tract, they originate from the cortex and they end into the spinal cord. But corticobulbar tracts, they do not leave the brain. They start within the brain and they end within the brain. Like they start within the cortex and they end in the brainstem. They do not come out of the brain. Okay, now what they actually do, they originate out of the cortex and then they come down and supply cranial nerve nuclei, different cranial nerve nuclei which are present in the brainstem. They supply the cranial nerve nuclei. These are, you may say, corresponding to anterior horn cells which are present in the spinal cord, at where corticospinal tracts and corticobulbar tracts originating from the cortex ends at the cranial nerve nuclei present in the brainstem. The different cranial nerve nuclei, like 3 and 4 cranial nerve nuclei, for cranial nerve third and fourth are present in the midbrain, for 5, 6, 7, 8 present in the pons, for 9, 10, 11 and 12 present in the medulla. So after corticospinal tract reaching the cranial nerve nuclei, from there starts the cranial nerve. From the cranial nerve nuclei originates the cranial nerve. Okay, and they supply or they perform their functions. Now one thing we need to keep in mind, that they are motor tracts and they originate from the motor cortex, so they cannot supply the cranial nerves which are sensory. Okay, they will only supply the motor cranial or the mixed cranial nerves, those nerves which have the motor component in it. So the cranial nerves which are totally sensory in the group of cranial nerves are cranial nerves 1, 2 and 8. These cranial nerves are total sensory, so they do not receive corticobulbar tracts. Okay, the cranial nerve 1 and 2, they are present in the cortex. Only 8th cranial nerve is present in the brainstem. Okay, so this does not receive the corticobulbar tracts. Okay, so this is about corticobulbar tracts. Now I would like to talk about the second component, that is the extrapyramidal tracts. Now pyramidal tracts and extrapyramidal tracts, the first differentiation you can do is that by thinking that pyramidal tracts, they originate from the cortex. Extrapyramidal, I've explained in my previous video what a cortex is. I would strongly suggest you to watch the previous video of beginners and of the pyramidal tract. This will be much more easier for you to understand. Extrapyramidal tract, they do not arise from the cortex, they arise from the structure that are lying below the cortex. I'm not going into the detail of those structures. I'm giving a collective name that they arise from the subcortical structures. Subcortical mean the structure which lie below the cortex. They do not arise from the cortex. Okay, so you can have like if we take an example, you have basal ganglia, you have caudate, putamen, red nucleus, substantia nigra. You have different subcortical structures that are lying below the cortex. So from the subcortical structure, the extrapyramidal tracts arise. Okay, and then they connect both to the pyramidal tracts as well as to the anterior horn cells. Okay, now here the important thing is that what is the function or what is the importance of the extrapyramidal tract. You can take an example of a head of an institution or narrator of an institution or leader. Extrapyramidal tracts are responsible for everything done at the target organ. Like for example, if a movement is performed, like if you perform knee flexion, so like in other words, you may say like if you are performing knee flexion or knee extension to kick a football, so extrapyramidal tract will decide that which muscles need to contract, which muscles need to relax, what should be the force of contraction, what should be the pace of the contraction, what should be the timing of the contraction. Everything will be decided by the extrapyramidal tract. In other words, you may say extrapyramidal tract will prepare the whole plan. Then the corticospinal tracts will only follow the directions given by the extrapyramidal tract. Extrapyramidal tract prepare the plan, they give it to the corticospinal tract. Corticospinal tract then move to that or take the information towards the target organ. They only are responsible for activating the muscles, the corticospinal tract. Rest all of the information is given by the extrapyramidal tract. They activate the muscle, corticospinal tract activate the muscles according to the information given to them, and then they perform the activity. Okay, it's like you can say the head of the institute which write the whole thing that this should be done, and then the employee take the orders and perform it. So extrapyramidal tracts are like head of the institute. They plan the whole thing, they give it to the corticospinal tract, and corticospinal tract just performs. They also go directly to the anterior horn cell to check that if everything is being done in a right way or not. Okay, so this is what about the extrapyramidal tract. You can see at many places about a table given about giving the names of the extrapyramidal tract at different places. I have not mentioned the table. At most of the places it is given where they tell that from where they rise, where they go, and what they do. So you can have it from your anatomy books or any other reliable source which you find easy for you to get. Okay, for example, I've mentioned to explain the scenario, I've mentioned two examples. It's for rubrospinal tracts and vestibulospinal tracts. For example, if you take the example of rubrospinal tract, they decide the shape of the hand. Like you can say it, for example, if you are planning to hold a pen or a paper or anything else, rubrospinal tract will decide that which muscles need to contract, which muscles need to relax, what should be the shape of the hand before lifting any object. Okay, that is done by the extrapyramidal tract. They'll give the directions to the corticospinal tract, and the corticospinal tract will just perform the activity. Similarly, for the vestibulospinal tract, they're mostly responsible for balance stuff. So vestibulospinal tract will dictate the muscle tone, posture, and position of head, or everything that is required to be activated, and that is required to be suppressed for maintaining the balance. That all prescription will be made by the vestibulospinal tract and given to the corticospinal tract to perform according to the requirement. So this is what done into the extrapyramidal tracts. Thank you very much.